we may as well get right down to it. I've given 50 years to the law. I've seen a lot. I'm getting too old to keep secrets. Here at Howard University, we were taught one simple idea. The law is a weapon if you know how to use it. I was here during the Great Depression of class of 1933. See, you got this fancy auditorium now. Even got a chandelier. We had an old 3-story brownstone with no heat. Nobody knew what air conditioning was back then. Now, every morning I'd catch the train from Baltimore and arrive at Union Station. And some days I'd walk past the United States Capitol on my way to class. You see, they call Baltimore up south. That's just below what we used to call the Smith & Wesson line. They call Baltimore up south because, well, that's where the slaves ran to when they escaped the plantations in the deep south. And maybe give reason to why I was born there. Now, my Uncle Fearless, he used to tell me stories about my great-grandfather. They called him Thurgood. It seems as a boy, he was a tracker for this big game hunter in the toughest part of the Congo. And this big game hunter brought my great-grandfather to Eastern Maryland as a slave. And Thurgood, oh, he hated being a slave. He became so hard to handle that the big game hunter got fed up and said, "Listen here, I brought you over here myself, so I guess I can't shoot you like you deserve. You so argue to white people, I can't sell you, I can't even give you away. So I'm gonna set you free, provided you get the hell off these eastern shores and never come back." That was the only time the big game hunter didn't get an argument from Thurgood. But years later, he did come back. And he bought land right next door to that big game hunter and tormented him for the rest of his life. My grandfather's name was Thurgood Marshall. He had a grocery store on the corner of Dolphin and Division, and Grandma Annie Marshall was the lady of the store. One day, the electric company decides to put a power pole right in front of the store. So when the workmen came with the court order, Grandma Annie took one of those old cane-back kitchen chairs out on the sidewalk, plopped herself down and sat there for 4 days and 4 nights till she got her way. They say Grandma Annie was the first successful sit-down strike in the history of Maryland. Now, my mother's father, his name was Isaiah Olive Branch Williams. Came home from the Merchant Marines, started a family. A boy and a girl, Avon and Avanya, named after Shakespeare's rivers. Then Media Marquetta for the family store. Norma, for my mother, named after Bellini's opera. And Uncle Fearless for the way he glared at his daddy right after he was born. You know, as a boy, I understood 2 things marked my family: distinctive names and extreme stubbornness. My parents named me after my grandfather, Thurgood. Thoroughood. By the 2nd grade, I got tired of writing all those letters, so I cut it to Thurgood. I was born in 1908, the year William Howard Taft was elected president, and the same year, Jack Johnson knocked out Tommy Burns to become the first Negro heavyweight champion of the world. You know what they did the next day? They went out looking for the Great White Hope to get that title back. There were race riots in Springfield, Illinois, home of Abraham Lincoln. 89 Negroes were lynched that year. That's when they started the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. How many of you have heard of Homer Adolph Plessy? After the Civil War, Homer Plessy and other Negroes in the South had been free to vote and sit anywhere they damn well pleased. And then in 1890, Louisiana passed a law that ordered rail companies to provide separate accommodations for white people and colored people. You know what they called it? An act to promote comfort for passengers. Homer Plessy decides to challenge this law by taking a seat in the white-only coach just outside of New Orleans. He refused to move to the colored car and was arrested. He was hauled into criminal district court. Well, Homer Plessy said the segregation law violates his rights under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Judge John H. Ferguson didn't see it that way and fined him $25. Homer Plessy refused to pay the $25, and he and his lawyer took it all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. The case was called Plessy versus Ferguson. And the Supreme Justices voted 7-1 against Mr. Plessy. Listen to what the justices wrote. The 14th Amendment could not have been intended to enforce social equality. The feelings of inferiority that come from being segregated exist only because the colored race chooses to put that construction on it. Well, what did that mean? It meant that it's now legal for any state to pass Jim Crow law and force Negroes to accept separate but equal facilities. You know, growing up in Baltimore, we had to use separate park benches, separate drinking fountains, separate public toilets. So if you want to know my story, don't forget that name. Homer Adolph Plessy.